Welcome to Scarlet Tavern. Grab a drink, take a seat, and let's begin. Today we're diving headfirst into the twisted tale of a man who stood head and shoulders above the rest. Literally. He's the gentle giant with a monstrous mind, the friendly face that harbored a chilling secret, and the man whose gruesome deeds left a mark on true crime history. Yes, folks, we're talking about the one, the only, Ed Kemper, also known as the Co-Ed Killer. Buckle up because this story is as wild as it is unsettling. So grab your popcorn and your favorite drink. Let's get ready to explore the bizarre, the brutal, and the bewildering world of Ed Kemper. Stay tuned. It's going to be a killer episode. This is Scarlet Tavern. All right.
Ed Kemper, we've been talking about him for a while, and now we're finally here.
This is, again, like I always say, for lack of a better term, my favorite serial killer, if you could have a favorite. I would say the serial killer I've always been interested the most in, the one I've studied the most. So much so that Ben was doing research on this and gave me the sheet, and I was like, nope, it's missing this, it's missing this, it's missing this, and then Ben had to go through and dig those out, just because I've studied Ed Kemper a lot.
Plus the fact that it seems like there seems to be very, in my opinion, short of people who are publishing books, which I would love to buy all these books on these subjects. If someone wants to start a GoFundMe campaign for my book fund, I will not stop you. But it seems like there is, in my opinion, on the internet, a concerted effort to sanitize what exactly they have, not just Ed Kemper, but just in general, what many of these horrible people have done in order so that it's more palpable, I guess is the word I'm thinking of, for people to read of what exactly him and others have done. So, yeah, a lot of the times it was when I was researching it, it was like, oh, he did this. I need more details. And I couldn't find it.
And that's where it goes into, I studied him in college and stuff like that. So I had a lot of the notes I got to read the original FBI notes when they interviewed him, when they coined the term serial killer in the 70s. Which, if you have not seen Mindhunters, it is a great show. It is all about the coining of serial killer. And the guy that plays Ed Kemper in it, he has him down to a T. He looks like him, he acts like him, and it was just, I'm pretty sure he won an award for that role.
If he didn't, he should have.
Yeah, so... and speaking of Jonathan Groff, he didn't play Ed Kemper, but he was one of the FBI agents. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Groff, out of his 30 years in Broadway, just won his first Tony Award.
Oh, good for him.
So, congratulations to Jonathan Groff for that.
Yeah.
But, anyways, so let's get started.
Yep.
Edmund Emil Kemper III was born in Burbank, California. That's the first problem.
Yeah.
On December 18th, 1948. He was the middle child, another problem, and only son of Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr. Edmund Jr. was a World War II veteran, worked as an electrician after testing nuclear weapons at the Pacific Proving Grounds. This man's not an idiot.
Yeah.
Clarnell frequently belittled her husband's occupation, describing it as menial while she was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Not hating on stay-at-home moms.
No, we are not doing that.
When you act like that to your husband, you deserve to be talked to that way.
And especially when he makes, as we see here, the remark of that fighting in World War II and overseeing nuclear weapons testing was that, and also was actually preferable than to dealing with his wife.
Yeah. He would rather go back to war. Edmund Jr. later remarked that living with Clarnell was more taxing than wartime combat and atomic bomb testings. Kemper, who weighed 13 pounds at birth.
Jesus!
Towering over his peers by age 4. Early signs of his antisocial behavior included cruelty to animals. At age 10, he buried a pet cat alive, later digging it up, decapitating it, and mounting its head on a spike. He derived pleasure from deceiving his family about the cat's death. At 13, he killed another family cat out of jealousy and kept its remains in his closet until his mother discovered them.
Honestly, that's where Kemper kind of lost me. I'm a huge cat lover, and obviously, I'm an animal lover, but this is just wrong.
This is part of the whole trifecta, where you have what they call the holy trinity of serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
The three things that are signs that you are probably a socio or psychopath. Do you know all three?
I know the animal killings. I know the... Basically, I think... Actually, you know what? No, I thought I did.
So it is cruelty to animals. It is arson.
Oh, really?
And it is bedwetting.
Bedwetting?
At an older age, yes.
Huh.
So typically, when those three play in, that person's more than likely going to be a sociopath or a psychopath. They're still obviously doing studies on it, but from everything we have gathered, that is the holy trinity of serial killers.
Okay, so those are basically the three correlations that just keep popping up.
Yep. Every serial killer has had those three issues. Or a combination of like two of them, whatever. But cruelty to animals obviously is the biggest thing. That's kind of the first step, and then they move up to people. Yeah. And then I'm going to say in this, we're going to talk a lot about nature versus nurture in this. Mm-hmm. If Ed wasn't treated the way he was at home, stuff like that, would he have turned out the way he did? Or would he have been less bad than he was? And then especially when we get into his adult life and we talk about the things that he tried to get into but was denied and things like that. So this is going to be a lot of nature versus nurture, and we'll kind of discuss that at the end. So Kemper harbored dark fantasies that exhibited a morbid imagination. He performed mock rituals with his sister's dolls, removing their heads and hands. With a dark and active fantasy life, he would act out bizarre sex acts with his sister's dolls. Post-arrest, he said, "I remember there was actually a sexual thrill. You hear that little pop and pull their heads off and hold them up by the hair. Whipping their heads off, their bodies sitting there, that'd get me off."
Jesus.
Cornell didn't help matters by calling him a sick pervert. Don't say that to your kids.
No.
Even if it's true.
Yeah.
Don't say that to your kids. Soon, Cornell feared young Ed would sexually assault one or both of his sisters. Her solution was to lock him in the basement for days and weeks at a time, alone, a bare light bulb hanging from a wire in the center of the dark and creepy space. Since the door locked from the outside, the only way out was through a trapdoor beneath the dining room table. Again, wow. This is actually, let me finish. Trapped, Ed would lay on the cold cement floor staring into the flame of the furnace. And it was then he later told an FBI profiler, just like we were talking about that TV show, he saw the face of the devil for the first time. When teased by his elder sister Susan about kissing his teacher, he chillingly replied that he would have to kill her first. He once sneaked out with his father's bayonet to watch his second-grade teacher through her windows. His favorite childhood games included gas chamber and electric chair, where he pretended to be executed. Kemper also faced near-death experiences, such as his sister trying to push him in front of a train and into the deep end of a swimming pool. Okay, this is the first thing where we see nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
His mother treated him like garbage. She was scared of him instead of trying to understand him and probably help him.
Helping was the key thing.
This was the thing. If she tried to understand him, maybe take him to get help. Listen, we're at this point, we're in the 50s. We're in the mid-50s. It's not like therapy doesn't exist. It was there.
It would, and from what all accounts, Ed Kemper's family was very middle class. He wasn't like poor and destitute. It's not like,
especially with what his father did. He probably their version of TRICARE, whatever it was. I know we have TRICARE now. I don't know how far back TRICARE went.
I don't think it's back that far.
But they still had his father still had military connections. His father made a decent living.
It really seems like, so far from what I can see, probably it just seems like his mom. We're gonna get into it further. His mom just wasn't a nice person.
Yeah,
she probably.
She liked women more than men because she was fine with her daughters, but her husband and her son.
Yeah, and I think that just probably just resented the fact, and probably Ed was probably born a little odd. He probably,
sure he was.
maybe, again, without talking to Ed Kemper, I don't know how I feel if I could have got the opportunity to
I would
talk.
love to, because he's supposed to be a funny fucking
I've
dude.
heard that too.
I've seen interviews with the real Ed Kemper, and he's fucking hilarious.
I've also read exactly what he's done to people, and so, but that's neither here nor there. But I get the impression that Ed kind of was a weird kid growing up. He was very peculiar. His mother probably didn't care much for him. He started developing odd tendencies. Whether these are weird ones or are these just like these, we don't know, but she reacted the wrong way, I feel like.
So, and here's the thing, like, we're talking about him being born a little odd. How many people are there that are like that?
Well,
there's a lot.
Sure, there's a little kid. That's when you have loving parents who'd be like, no, Timmy.
Exactly.
Or no, Susie, you don't do that. We don't do that.
So there's a lot of people we never hear about. They say that there's upwards of 2,000 active serial killers at any given time, just in the U.S.
Oh yeah, and that's purely statistics right there. That's just judging off of what the FBI knows about serial killers and statistics. Yeah, I believe I heard that.
And then John Douglas, who's a very famous FBI profiler, he estimated up to 5,000 people at a time.
That could
So it's. Again, this is nature versus nurture. If she would not have locked him in a basement and treated him like this and got him help, would he have turned into a serial killer? Yeah, we don't know.
I think as we're going to we get further down, I think we're going to see. You're right, maybe, and I'll hold my opinion on this until the end of the episode, end of everything.
Kemper had a close bond with his father and was devastated by his parents' separation in 1957 and their subsequent divorce in 1961. He was sent to live with his mother in Helena, Montana, where their relationship was severely dysfunctional. Clarnell, a neurotic and domineering alcoholic, frequently belittled and abused Kemper. She made him sleep in a locked basement, mocked him for his size. At this point, he was 6'4" by the age of 15.
Good God.
And derided him as a real weirdo. She also refused to show him affection, fearing it would turn him gay, and told him that no woman would ever love him. Kemper later described her as a sick, angry woman, and it is speculated that she had borderline personality disorder.
And now that actually would explain a lot, and that could be a lot. And now, again, how do you expect, what do you expect when somebody has an untreated mental illness and they're raising a child? Or
who
children.
Has a mental illness. At 14, Kemper ran away to reconcile with his father in Van Nuys, California. However, he soon discovered that his father had remarried and had a stepson. After a brief stay, his father sent him to live with his paternal grandparents, probably not the best thing, on a ranch in North Fork, California. Kemper hated it there, describing his grandfather as senile and his grandmother is constantly emasculating him and his grandfather.
It was
kind of runs in the family there.
It really was. He would describe his grandmother as basically almost kind of like his mom and his mother in a way that she was just this overbearing, excuse my language, overbearing bitch who just wanted to make everyone know that she had the biggest set of balls around.
Yeah.
It's like he really felt like he was more grating. He was just like, oh God, I got to deal with this.
On August 27th, 1964, at the age of 15, Edmund Kemper committed his first murders. The incident occurred during an argument with his grandmother, Maud Matilda Huey Kemper, while they were sitting at the kitchen table. Enraged, Kemper stormed off, retrieved a rifle his grandfather had given him for hunting, and returned to the kitchen where he fatally shot his grandmother in the head, then twice more in the back. According to reports, her last words were, "Oh, you'd better not be shooting the birds again." I'm like, no, bitch, I'm shooting you. Some accounts also indicated that she suffered multiple post-mortem stab wounds inflicted with a kitchen knife, typical with a crime of passion.
Yeah.
When Kemper's grandfather, Edmund Emil Kemper Sr., returned from grocery shopping, Kemper shot him in the driveway next to his car. Unsure of what to do next, he called his mother, who advised him to contact the local police. Kemper did so and waited calmly to be taken into custody. Following his arrest, Kemper stated that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma. He testified that he killed his grandfather to spare him the anguish of discovering his wife's murder, as he believed his grandfather would be furious with him. Psychiatrist Donald Lund, who interviewed Kemper later in life, suggested that in his own twisted way, Kemper believed he was avenging the rejection he felt from both his father and his mother. Given the heinous nature of his crimes, especially for a 15-year-old, court psychiatrists diagnosed Kemper with paranoid schizophrenia. He was subsequently sent to Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility in San Luis Obispo County that houses mentally ill convicts.
Yeah. This always felt, when I read it, it felt more of like if the stabbing part is true, it always felt like more akin to he just finally snapped and
It's a crime of passion. His grandmother pissed him off enough that he just snapped because it was during an argument.
That was a crime of passion, but his grandfather's killing was not a crime of passion. That is the sociopathic part. It's like, well, I better spare Grandpa from seeing his wife dead. Boom.
But is that sociopathic, or is that him, in his own way, him trying to spare his grandfather? And out of love, because he never hated his grandfather.
No, but I don't think he cared. I think at this point he doesn't care anymore. He's just, to me, it's just a very cold, calculating thing.
Let's put this out there. Ed Kemper's not a sociopath. He's a psychopath.
Really?
He can feel emotion. Sociopaths can't feel emotion. They can't love. They can't do any of that. Ed Kemper has said that he's had feelings for women. He's had all of that stuff. Not just sexual feelings, but he's wanted to fall in love and things like that. So he is more of a psychopath than a sociopath. So he can still feel, he still has feelings, he can still love his family. Even a sociopath, they don't love their parents, they don't love their siblings, they don't love anybody. They just don't have that in them, where he does. So during his incarceration at Escudero State Hospital, California youth authorities, psychiatrists, and social workers disagreed with the court's diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Their evaluations indicated that Kemper exhibited no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of bizarre thinking. They noted his intelligence and introspective nature, with the initial IQ test measuring his IQ at 136.
Damn.
Significantly above average.
Oh, yeah. This is like borderline genius level.
Yeah. He subsequently re-diagnosed with a less severe condition, personality trait disturbance, passive-aggressive type. A later IQ test during his stay yielded an even higher score of 145.
Good God.
Ed Kemper, if he would have not had all this shit and would have actually... I mean, look at what his father did for a living.
Yeah, I mean, his father was
seemingly a smart man. So, doing electrical stuff with nukes and all of that. So, he probably could have gone into the same stuff if he just had a better life.
Man, maybe.
Kemper endeared himself to a psychiatrist by being a model prisoner. He was trained to administer psychiatric tests to other inmates, demonstrating a level of diligence and pride in his work that was atypical of a sociopath. This is what I'm talking about. So they're talking about him being a sociopath. Sociopath would not be okay administering psychiatric tests and taking pride in his work. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They care about killing, and that's it.
Or they just don't care at all.
Where the psychopath, they have those feelings. So you'll see them talk about sociopath a lot. In my opinion, he is a psychopath, not a sociopath. One psychiatrist remarked on his exceptional performance, noting that he was a very good worker. And we're going to see that a lot. Anytime he's in jail, he's a model prisoner. He will only defend himself when he has to. Plus, most people aren't going to go after a guy who's 6'8". While at Atascadero, Kemper also became a member of the JCs and claimed to have developed new psychological tests and scales for the Minnesota multifaceted personality inventory, including an overt hostility scale. After his second arrest, Kemper revealed that his understanding of these tests allowed him to manipulate his psychiatrist. He admitted to learning a great deal from the sex offenders to whom he administered tests, using this knowledge to his advantage.
See, this is where also I'm seeing the cunning of Ed Kemper, the very manipulative. This is
a very smart man.
Because he was able to fool so many. I mean, I probably in hindsight maybe not give this guy access to the material of how psychiatrists.
He never should have been released.
No,
if he would have been released and not have been released at that point, we never would have had serial killings.
But it really felt like the California. I get a feeling that the court in his area where he killed, they probably didn't. They never. I bet you any money if you were to look at the records, you would probably find that there was that no child or had ever committed a crime that seemingly like, oh my god, and then he's like, why'd you do it, son? He probably like, I just want to see how I felt to kill grandma and your grandpa. I just want to spare him his feelings. He's like, okay, this kid is nuts. He's got to be. There's no other way. No normal 15-year-old does this. So they probably just slapped the paranoid schizophrenia on him just to kind of like, well, that makes sense. And then, yeah.
So on December 18th, 1969, his 21st birthday, Edmund Kemper was released on parole from Atascadero State Hospital. Despite the recommendations of hospital psychiatrists, he was placed in the care of his mother, Clarnell, who had remarried, taken the surname Strandberg, and divorced again. At the time, Clarnell lived in Aptos, California, near her job as an administrative assistant at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Kemper managed to convince the psychiatrist that he was rehabilitated, and on November 29th, 1972, his juvenile records were permanently expunged. The final report from his probation psychiatrist stated, "If I were to see this patient without having any history available or getting any history from him, I would think that we're dealing with a very well-adjusted young man who had initiative, intelligence, and who is free of any psychiatric illness. It is my opinion that he has made a very excellent response to the years of treatment and rehabilitation, and I would see no psychiatric reason to consider him to be of any danger to himself or to any member of society. And since it may allow him more freedom as an adult to develop his potential, I would consider it reasonable to have a permanent expunction of his juvenile records."
That was a mistake.
Bet you that psychiatrist regretted writing that after everything came out.
Yeah.
While staying with his mother, Kemper attended community college to comply with his parole requirements and aspired to become a police officer. However, he was rejected due to his size. He stood 6'9" tall, earning him the nickname Big Ed. Despite the rejection, he maintained relationships with the Santa Cruz police officers and became a self-described friendly nuisance at a bar called the Jury Room, a popular hangout for local cops. And this is one of the things is, if he was not rejected, what would have happened? So obviously we have his whole childhood. Would he have been a serial killing cop? Maybe. It's possible. Or would he found fulfillment in the job enough to get that little itch in his brain by helping people, maybe helping people that went through the same stuff he went through, just why he wanted to become a cop. And so, again, this is the nature versus nurture. If he would not have been rejected, what would have happened?
You know what? And again, I'm going to defer what I'm thinking right now, just because I want because I want everyone to hear what we got the rest of it, but I'm still kind of formulating what I'm thinking on this.
Kemper worked a series of menial jobs before securing employment with the State of California Division of Highways. During this period, his relationship with Clarnell remained toxic and hostile, with frequent arguments overheard by neighbors. Kemper later described their relationship. "My mother and I started right in on horrendous battles, just horrible battles, violent and vicious. I've never been in such a vicious verbal battle with anyone. It would go to fists with a man, but this was my mother, and I couldn't stand the thought of my mother and I doing these things. She insisted on it and just over stupid things. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned."
Sounds like a wonderful person.
Like honestly, killing's wrong, but I understand why he killed his mother.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Eventually, Kemper moved out to live with a friend in Alameda, but he continued to struggle with his mother's frequent phone calls and surprise visits. Financial difficulties often forced him to return to his mother's apartment in Aptos. During this time, Kemper became engaged to a female student from Turlock High School in March 1973, but the engagement ended after a second arrest. Her parents requested that her name not be revealed to the public. She was reportedly 17 and still in high school at the time. And he's like 23 years old at this point, give or take. Back then, it's a little different.
Yeah.
You're in the 70s where it's the age gap is a little more. I mean, kids were getting married at 16. So,
yeah, that's true.
You got to look at it that way. Plus, again, this is where I'm talking about the psychopath versus sociopath. Sociopath never, they would get married for a cover, to cover it up, but he has nothing to cover up at this point.
True.
So, he would not have become engaged to this woman if he didn't like her. So, in the same year he started working for the Highway Division, Kemper was hit by a car while riding his recently purchased motorcycle.
Ouch.
He sustained a severe arm injury and received a $15,000 settlement from the driver, which is about $102,000.
Damn.
Almost $103,000. Using the part of the settlement, he bought a 1969 Ford Galaxy and began to notice a large number of young women hitchhiking. That car accident honestly set him on the path. That Ford Galaxy is how he.
I think I think he was on the path. This just gave him the vehicle on how to go the path. I mean, because Ed Kemper doesn't buy a car, then he starts walking around the highways or doing whatever, and he finds these women.
Yeah, but
this just made it more expedited.
Yeah, I mean, he was, as we're gonna see, he's picking them up, driving them places, and then killing them.
Like I said, it made it easier for him to get to it, but to get to where he wanted to go at this point. But irregardless, car, no car, he's still doing this.
So he started storing plastic bags, knives, blankets, and handcuffs in his car. Initially, he picked up young female hitchhikers and let them go without harm, claiming to have given rides to around 150 hitchhikers. However, as his homicidal urges grew stronger, urges he referred to as his little zapples, he began to act on them. Kemper later rationalized his actions by blaming the women for hitchhiking, saying they were flaunting in my face the fact that they could do any damn thing they wanted and the society is as screwed up as it is. Between May 1972 and April 1973, Ed Kemper embarked on a killing spree that claimed the lives of 8 people. His victims were predominantly female students hitchhiking in the Santa Cruz area. Kemper would lure them into his car, drive to secluded locations, then kill them through various methods such as shooting, stabbing, smothering, or strangling. He would then take their bodies back to his home where he decapitated them, performed iramation on their severed heads. For those that don't know, he fucked their heads. Yeah. Engaged in necrophilia and dismembered them.
Yeah, that's...
During this 11-month period, Kemper killed 5 college students, 1 high school student, his mother, and his mother's best friend. He often sought out victims after arguments with his mother, who refused to introduce him to women attending the university where she worked. Kemper had admitted that the young women he killed were surrogates for his ultimate target, his mother. Now, I don't know if we're going to... Oh, yes, we are going to get into it. That's the next one. There was the breast incident. So, May 7th, 1972, Ed Kemper was driving in Berkeley when he picked up 2 18-year-old hitchhiking students from Fresno State University, Mary Ann Pesci and Anita Mary Lucchesa, under the pretense of taking them to Stanford University. After driving for an hour, he reached a secluded wooded area near Alameda, which he knew from his work at the Highway Department. Young women were unaware that he had deviated from their intended route. On this isolated location, Kemper handcuffed Pesci and locked Lucchesa in the trunk of his car. He then proceeded to stab and strangle Pesci to death before killing Lucchesa in a similar manner. Kemper later recounted that while he handcuffed Pesci, he accidentally brushed his hand against her breast and apologized, saying, "Whoops, I'm sorry," even though he murdered her shortly after. He admitted that he chose these victims because they appeared upper middle class, a demographic he found more appealing than scroungy, messy, dirty, smelly hippie types.
Jesus.
Well, at least he picked attractive ones. Should have just killed the hippies. Kemper placed the bodies in the trunk of his Ford Galaxy and drove back to his apartment. On the way, a police officer stopped him for a broken taillight, but the officer did not notice the corpses. Upon reaching his apartment where his roommate was not present, Kemper brought the bodies inside. He photographed and sexually violated the corpses before dismembering them. He placed the body parts into plastic bags and abandoned them near Loma Prieta Mountain. Before disposing of Pesci's and Lucchesa's severed heads in a ravine, Kemper performed irrumatio on them. In August of that year, Pesci's skull was discovered on Loma Prieta Mountain, but the rest of her remains and any trace of Lucchesa were never found.
Probably animals got
until this day.
Yeah, probably unfortunately animals probably got to the remains, and that's where it. I mean, most people don't realize back then, especially northern
California was woods.
Central and Northern California. I mean, even
mountains.
Yeah, even today, it's still probably predominantly.
But it was not as city as it is now.
No. Now it's full of tourists and everything.
Yeah, like Loma Prieta Mountain is still like it was in the 70s. It's a tourist destination. Aiko-ku. On September 14th, 1972, Kemper picked up 15-year-old dance student Aiko-ku, who was hitchhiking to a dance class. After accidentally locking himself out of his car, Ku allowed him back in, despite the gun still being inside. Kemper then choked her, unconscious, raped, and killed her. He placed her body in the trunk, had drinks at a nearby bar, and later brought her body back to his apartment for further sexual violations and dismemberment. So, he gets out of the car I'm going to kind of expand on this a little more. So, what happens is he goes to a secluded area like he normally does. He gets out of the car and goes to her side to get her out, and the door's locked. So he can't get in. She unlocks the door. He has no gun, no nothing. She unlocks the door. He then gets inside, grabs the gun, grabs her, chokes her, rapes her, all of that. And then kills her. Yeah. So she let him back in.
Poor girl is probably scared.
She's 15?
Yeah.
She doesn't know any better.
No.
This 1972. After this happened, hitchhiking went down.
With good reason. And that's where and also I believe there's I cannot think of that person's name right now, but I believe there was also a actual, like, all stereotypical hitchhiking serial killer.
There is. And he quartered people.
Yeah.
So he would there's actually a movie about it, the Hitcher.
Yeah.
Great movie. If you like that horror kind of stuff, Hitcher's a great movie.
Yeah.
Where he quarters them with a semi truck.
Yeah. It was hitchhiking is not a thing anymore.
No.
With good reason.
Yeah. Now we just have Uber. Now you have to pay for hitchhiking.
Unfortunately, probably won't be long before we'll have the Uber killer.
There's already been a lot of stuff that's happened. So, on January 7th, 1973, Kemper picked up 18-year-old Cynthia and Cindy Shaw on the Cabrillo College campus, drove to a secluded area, and shot her with a .22 caliber pistol. He brought her body to his mother's house, kept it overnight in his room, and the next morning had sexual intercourse with the corpse, removed the bullet, and dismembered her in her mother's bathtub. He buried her head in his mother's garden, facing upwards towards her bedroom, explaining that his mother always wanted people to look up to her. The rest of Shaw's remains were discarded off a cliff, and her body parts were later discovered by authorities. Okay, I'm going to kind of expand on this too. He did not just keep it overnight in his room.
Yeah.
It was in his bed, and he slept next to her.
Yeah.
Next to her corpse. So he kills her, brings her to the mother's house, puts her in the bed, sleeps next to her corpse, wakes up, has sexual intercourse with the corpse, removes the bullet, dismembers her, and then buries the head facing his mother's bedroom so she's looking up to her.
Hey, Kemper really missed his calling in home cleaning.
Could you imagine if he was a writer? These little subtle stuff of, I placed her head this way because my mother always wanted people to look up to her.
Yeah. I mean, somehow he does all this and his mother doesn't even notice that all this.
She doesn't notice anything he does.
He must have been a really great housekeeper because apparently he dismembered and cleaned up enough. I mean, I know the bathtub would drain the blood, but still,
I mean, it would stain it if you don't clean it.
Exactly, and she's just like, well, I mean, according to him, she's also a drunk, so who knows? Maybe she just didn't care, or like, what happened here?
Yeah. On February 5th, 1973, following a heated argument with his mother, Edmund Kemper left his house in search of new victims. With heightened awareness of a serial killer targeting hitchhikers in the Santa Cruz area, students had been advised to accept rides from only cars displaying university stickers. Kemper, whose mother worked at the University of California, Santa Cruz, had obtained such a sticker, which allowed him to lure victims more easily. Because he was a very smart man. Also, he was watching the news.
He's also taking advantage of a lot of this. To me, this is just a stupid thing. Only accept rides from people who have university stickers. Here's an idea. How about tell them stop accepting rides from strangers?
Yeah.
I mean,
people weren't too trusting in the 70s.
It must have been, because to me, it's like, did nobody in the office say, like, sir or ma'am, whoever came up with this idea, what if the killer is a university student?
Exactly. That day, Kemper encountered 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe and 20-year-old Alice Helen Liu in the UCSC campus. According to Kemper, he first saw Thorpe exiting a building after attending a lecture. She got in the front passenger seat of his car, believing Kemper to be a fellow student, and began chatting with him. Shortly thereafter, he noticed Liu hitchhiking and offered her a ride. Liu entered the back seat of his car. As they drove, Kemper slowed the vehicle and shot Thorpe in the head with a .22 caliber pistol. He then turned the gun on Liu, who was cowering in the back seat. His first 2 shots missed, but the third hit her in the temple. He then wrapped their bodies in blankets and drove them back to his mother's house. Upon arrival, Kemper beheaded the bodies in his car and carried the headless corpses into his mother's house, where he engaged in necrophilia. He then dismembered the bodies, removed the bullets to prevent identification, and discarded the remains the next morning. Some of their remains were found at Eden Canyon a week later, with additional remains discovered near Route 1 in March. When questioned in an interview about why he decapitated his victims, Kemper explained the head trip fantasies were a bit like a trophy. You know, the head is where everything is at. The brain, eyes, mouth. That's the person. I remember being told as a kid, you cut off the head and the body dies. The body is nothing after the head is cut off. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot left in the girl's body without the head. Yeah. On April 20th, 1973, Ed Kemper was awakened by his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, as she came home from a party. While sitting in her bed reading a book, she noticed him enter her room and remarked, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now. Kemper replied, no, good night. After she fell asleep, Kemper snuck back into her room, bludgeoned her with a claw hammer, and slit her throat with a penknife. He then beheaded her and humiliated her corpse, as he described in a 1984 interview. Kemper stated that he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour and threw darts at it, and eventually smashed her face in. He also cut out her tongue and larynx and attempted to dispose of them in the garbage disposal. However, the disposal could not break down the tough vocal cords and rejected the tissue back into the sink. This is where he's funny. Kemper later commented, that seemed appropriate as much as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years.
A sick way, yeah, I guess it is kind of funny.
Kemper hid his mother's corpse in a closet and went to drink at a nearby bar. Keep in mind, when he's saying drink at a nearby bar, this is the cop bar.
Yeah.
This is the jury room. This is the cop bar. So he's killing people and going into this cop bar and drinking with all these cops.
I wonder, I don't know, I wasn't able to find out, but I can't help but wonder if any of the cops investigating this, because keep in mind, everybody, like Kate said, there is obviously an FBI, but in the 1970s, half of them a majority of them are still trying to find freaking commies, or they're trying to chase down Russian spies, or they're spying on, civil rights or other social activist groups out in the country. No one's really looking for serial killers.
And keep in mind, serial killers did not exist.
You're right. Well, the official terminology didn't exist.
But they still weren't tracking people that had multiple kills.
No, they weren't. Not really. This kind of investigation would have been handled unless
by local police.
Unless they specifically ask FBI, please come and help us.
Or unless he crossed state lines.
Exactly, and that's if they knew it crossed state lines, but he never did. So I can't help but wonder, and again,
how many of the cops in the bar were investigating him?
And he's just there sitting drinking.
A lot, actually.
Yeah,
from what I've read, a few of the detectives that were in there, they were interviewed by the FBI afterwards, knowing that he frequented the bar, and they said they had no fucking idea.
Well, I mean, they probably wouldn't know.
They said he was weird, but he seemed like a cop chaser, and that's about it. That he wanted to be a cop, but he couldn't do it. Because again, back in this time, cops were not as big as him.
No, let's be honest. Nobody's really as big as Ed Kemper.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
Even today, there's not that many.
Shaq's a cop.
Yeah,
in multiple places.
But Shaq's also a multi-billionaire basketball player.
And their Mr. Olympia was a cop. So there are some cops that are like that now. And I have a friend that I was a cop with who is 6'8".
Ed, you were just born in the wrong decade. You could have been a cop today.
So, but they said that they had no clue. He just seemed like a cop chaser, somebody that wanted to hear cop stories, and they didn't mind because he would buy rounds for him and stuff like that. So, now Kemper hid his mother's corpse in a closet and went to drink at a nearby bar. Upon returning, he invited his mother's best friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor Hallett, over for dinner and a movie, which is weird. When Hallett arrived, Kemper strangled her to death. He then hid her corpse in a closet, cleaned up any signs of a disturbance, and left a note for the police. Approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday. No need for her to suffer any more at the hands of this horrible, murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it. Not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a lack of time. I got things to do. Afterward, Kemper fled the scene, driving nonstop to Pueblo, Colorado, while taking caffeine pills to stay awake for the over 1,000-mile journey. He drove there straight.
Damn.
Stopping for gas, and that is it. He had 3 guns and 100 rounds of ammunition in his car, believing he was the target of an active manhunt. Upon arriving in Pueblo and hearing no news on the radio about the murders of his mother and Hallett, Kemper called the police from a phone booth and confessed to the killings. Initially, the police did not take his call seriously and told him to call back later. Several hours later, Kemper called again, asking to speak to an officer he personally knew. He confessed to that officer about killing his mother and then Hallett, and then waited for the police to arrive to take him into custody. Upon his capture, Kemper also confessed to the murders of the 6 students. In a later interview, Kemper explained why he turned himself in. The original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real or emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Toward the end there, I started feeling the folly of the whole damn thing, and at the point of near exhaustion, near collapse, I just said to the hell with it and called it all off. Ed Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder on May 7, 1973. He was assigned Jim Jackson, the chief public defender in Santa Cruz County, as his attorney. Given Kemper's explicit and detailed confession, Jackson's only viable defense strategy was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. While in custody, Kemper attempted suicide twice. Trial began on October 23, 1973. 3 court-appointed psychiatrists evaluated Kemper and found him legally sane. One of these psychiatrists, Dr. Joel Ford, reviewed Kemper's juvenile records and his previous diagnosis of psychosis. Dr. Ford interviewed Kemper, including sessions under truth serum, and testified that Kemper had engaged in cannibalism, alleging that he sliced flesh from his victim's legs, cooked it, and consumed it in a casserole.
Which we've also established in previous episodes. Listen to our MK Ultra. Truth serum doesn't actually exist.
Correct. Despite these revelations, Ford concluded that Kemper was fully aware of his actions in each case and enjoyed the notoriety associated with being labeled a murderer. Kemper later recanted his confession of cannibalism, and from my understanding, ever since that, everybody believes that the cannibalism was coerced.
Could have been.
That this doctor tried to get him on saying more things to get a conviction. Because there's no evidence of him being a cannibal. You would have been able to see it in his house, things like that. Cannibals leave specific things. This just wasn't his MO.
No, I mean, and again,
because they did find some of the bodies,
yeah,
and they found like his mother's body and all that. There was no pieces of her cut off. If anybody, that's who he's eating.
Yeah, I mean, as we again going back to our MK Ultra episode, it just make whatever the quote unquote truth serum is, it just makes you highly suggestible. So, like you said, psychiatrist probably just injected it with them, and probably is like, yeah, you ate them, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
California law at the time followed the Manhattan standard for insanity, which required defendants to prove that at the time of the crime they were suffering from such a severe mental defect that they did not understand the nature and quality of their actions or did not know that their actions were wrong. The evidence suggested that Kemper knew the nature of his acts and had shown malice aforethought. On November 1st, 1973, Kemper took the stand. He testified that he killed his victims because he wanted them for myself, like possessions, and tried to persuade the jury of his insanity, arguing that only someone with an aberrant mind could commit such acts. He claimed that two beings inhabited his body and that when the killer personality took over, it was kind of like blacking out. On November 8th, 1973, the jury, consisting of 6 men and 6 women, deliberated for 5 hours before declaring Kemper sane and guilty on all counts. Kemper requested the death penalty, specifically asking for death by torture. However, due to a moratorium on capital punishment by the Supreme Court of California, he was instead sentenced to 7 years to life for each count to be served concurrently. Kemper was incarcerated at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Now, when on trial for the murder of his grandparents, Ed Kemper was initially diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia by court-appointed psychiatrist. However, California Youth Authority psychiatrists and social workers at Atascadero State Hospital disagreed with the diagnosis. They observed that Kemper exhibited no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of bizarre thinking. Again, they also noted his high intelligence and introspective nature. Consequently, Kemper was re-diagnosed with personality trait disturbance passive-aggressive type. But then after his arrest in 1973, a subsequent incarceration at the California Medical Facility, Kemper underwent further psychiatric evaluation. He was re-diagnosed with antisocial, narcissistic, and schizotypal personality disorders. These evaluations provided a more nuanced understanding of his psychological state, highlighting his manipulative behavior, lack of empathy, grandiosity, and the odd beliefs or eccentric behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, again, if anyone ever watches Mindhunters, the Ed Kemper one really, I wouldn't be surprised if the writers or the actor himself actually sat down with Ed Kemper, because Ed is a very...
He just watched a bunch of the documentaries,
probably
interviews with Ed Kemper. That's what he.
That's what he did.
He said that's how he got it.
Because
they wouldn't let him sit with him. He wanted to,
and
they were like, "Yeah, no, it's probably not a good idea."
Yeah, I mean, just Ed Kemper's things he said and everything. The second diagnostic is like you said, it's more nuanced, because again, Ed is a friendly, funny guy, but he's an odd guy. He had, like, you get him going, he is just like, whoa, man, you're just like, he could probably put the most other twisted minds probably to shame.
He would sit there and ask the interviewers if they wanted a sandwich because he's got good connections. He would give them a sandwich and a soda and like good deli sandwiches and all of this stuff. Like he was a gentleman when they would interview him. Unless you said something wrong and pissed him off.
Yeah, and
then he stands up, towering over everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Ed Kemper is, again, you've talked about the nature versus nurture, but Ed is he ain't right in the head. Like, that's obviously self-evident, but just in some of his mannerisms and his talking to people about different subjects, it's like, oh, that's kind of out there.
So in the California Medical Facility, Ed Kemper was housed alongside other notorious criminals such as Herbert Moland and Charles Manson.
He hated Manson.
Yeah, he did. Kemper held a particular disdain for Moland, who was responsible for a series of murders in the same area and time frame as Kemper, describing Moland as just a cold-blooded killer, killing everybody he saw for no good reason. Kemper used his size and intelligence to manipulate and intimidate Mullen, who stood a foot shorter at 5'9".
Oh, I'm taller than him.
Kemper recounted an incident where he used behavior modification techniques on Mullen, who had a habit of singing and disturbing others while they watched TV. I threw water on him to shut him up. Then, when he was a good boy, I'd give him peanuts. Herbie liked peanuts. That was effective because pretty soon he asked permission to sing. Yeah.
Oh, God. But he literally...
This is what he was good at. He was a genius.
He literally was the administrative assistant to the psychiatrist at the juvie hall.
He was a genius.
Yeah, I would have paid money to see him.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like a serial killer just tamed another serial killer.
So Kemper remains part of the general prison population and is considered a model prisoner. He managed the scheduling of other inmates' appointments with psychiatrists and became an accomplished craftsman of ceramic cups.
Do you think he'd make me a coffee mug?
I'll be honest, I would own a ceramic cup made by Ed Kemper. Additionally, he was a prolific narrator of audiobooks for a charity program serving the visually impaired, coordinating the prison's program and personally spending over 5,000 hours narrating books with several hundred completed recordings to his name. In 2015, after experiencing a stroke and being declared medically disabled, he retired from these positions. In 2016, he received his first rules violation report for failing to provide a urine sample. Well, dude had a fucking stroke. Give him a break. Just hold it for him. Jesus. While in prison, Kemper has participated in several interviews, including a segment in the 1982 documentary The Killing of America and an appearance in the 1984 documentary Murder, No Apparent Motive. His interviews have provided valuable insights into the mind of a serial killer. FBI profiler John Douglas described Kemper as among the brightest prison inmates he interviewed and noted his rare insight for a violent criminal, adding that he personally liked Kemper, describing him as friendly, open, sensitive, and having a good sense of humor. Keep in mind, John Douglas is the man that coined the term serial killer. So this man has a lot of pull in the FBI. What he says goes. Went. I'm pretty sure John Douglas is dead now, I think.
Pretty sure.
Pretty sure.
I always found it just bizarre.
No, he's still alive.
Oh, he is? Yeah.
He's 79.
I could just imagine Ed Kemper he's the secretary for the psychiatrist, and some prisoner is escorted to see his appointment, and Ed Kemper is just behind the desk as the secretary. The doctor will see you now today. What are you in for? I killed 6 people, including my mother.
Yeah, but yeah, he's still alive.
Hmm?
He's just writing books and stuff. Because obviously he wrote Mindhunter, which turned into the show. So Kemper has been open about the nature of his crimes and has stated that he participates in interviews to prevent others like him from killing. In his Murder, No Apparent Motive interview, he urged potential killers to seek help, stating, "There's somebody out there that is watching this and hasn't done that, hasn't killed people and wants to, and rages inside and struggles with that feeling, or is so sure they have it under control. They need to talk to somebody about it. Trust somebody enough to sit down and talk about something that isn't a crime. Thinking that way isn't a crime. Doing it isn't just a crime, it's a horrible thing. It doesn't know when to quit, and it can't be stopped easily once it starts." He also conducted an interview with French writer Stephanie Bourgeon in 1991. Kemper was first eligible for parole in 1979, but was denied. He was also denied for parole in 80, 81, and 82, subsequently waiving his right to a hearing in 85. At his 88 hearing, he acknowledged, "Society's not ready in any shape or form for me. I can't fault them for that." Parole was again denied in 91 and 94. He waived his rights to hearings in 97 and 2002. At his 2007 hearing, he was denied parole, with prosecutor Ariadne Simmons stating, "We don't care how much of a model prisoner he is because of the enormity of his crimes." Kemper waived his right to a hearing again in 2012, was denied parole in 2017, and is next eligible for parole this year.
So, quick thing before Stéphane Bourgon. He was a fairly noted French author, true crime author, but it turned out he was full of shit, and he was...
Oh, he's French.
Well, yeah. But he was supposedly this profiler, criminal expert, and then in fact it was It was just all BS.
So now that we're kind of wrapping this up, I want to, again, this nature versus nurture thing. So if we look at the statement he makes in that interview, where he's wanting people to, he's doing these interviews so that it prevents other people like him from killing. This, again, that's not a sociopath. That is a psychopath. That is, he knows what he did was wrong. He knows that he couldn't help it, but he recognizes that maybe if he would have gotten help as a kid, probably would not have happened. Or if he would have reached out even as an adult, probably would not have happened.
I think the biggest factor in here, and it wouldn't surprise. And if I could talk to Ed Kemper, I wonder. I can't. I believe he would agree if he just got the fuck away from his mother. Because this is the thing that I keep seeing in this. And I was researching and doing everything. Every time, despite his hatred of her, and he hated her. He hated her with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. But he could not get away from her for one reason or another. He always kept thinking he hates her. He goes to his father. Father sends to his grandparents. His grandmother is just his mother light. But who's the first person he calls after he killed them? He calls his mother.
Yep.
He gets out of juvie. Despite everything, he goes back to his mother. He goes no matter when, and he does. He says, I know he said he tried to move out, but financial. Here's the thing, though. Ed could have very well said, "Fuck you, I'm out," and he would and found his way. Now, obviously, maybe he wouldn't have been a cop. I mean, I thought that was total. I thought it was total BS. But here's the thing, though. While I do believe his mother guaranteed he became the killer he is, I'm not entirely unconvinced that there was not something wrong with Kemper already, and I don't. Now we will never know, and I'm not going to sit here thinking like maybe he would have just killed anyway, or would have. I don't know if being a cop would have helped. I think being a cop would have just mean he would have been a different type of killer. Sooner or later, someone was going to piss Ed Kemper off. And either Ed Kemper is going to just use his big, giant hands and rip somebody in half, or he's still going to kill. He's just going to do it differently.
But here's the thing, though, is as a cop, he would have had more access to mental help.
Not back then. Even today.
He still would have. Not to the point that we have today, but he still would have. He would have. Police therapists existed back then. They still existed back then because I have grandparents, great-grandparents that were cops back then. They still had all of that stuff. But again, I think if he would have gotten the mental help that he needed, that I personally don't believe he would have become a serial killer.
But would he have, but even then though, back in those days, would he have sought it out by himself? He's talking to this in interviews years after. He spent years in prison, having time to reflect and think about it, getting wiser and learning from his actions. I'm not convinced that unless Ed Kemper of today somehow magically travels back in time and tells his younger self, hey, get away from your mom, get some help, go to a psychiatrist. I know there's a stigma, because that's the thing. The stigma of therapy was very much there back then.
Oh, of course it was.
So, and unfortunately, there is still kind of a stigma for which there shouldn't be. But back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, absolutely there's a stigma. Society told men to suck it up and deal with it. Especially back then as a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. They had availability there, but I can't imagine Ed Kemper going to seek that. Now, again, though, you raised the nurture versus nature. Would he have needed it? I think he may not have. Not to the extent
he needs now if his mother did not do that. I mean, he probably would have had... Would he have had schizophrenia, whatever? Possibly.
I don't think he has schizophrenia.
I don't think he did either.
I think the second psychiatrist was very right. He has a very antisocial tendencies.
There's a lot of people that function perfectly fine that are antisocial.
Oh, I agree.
And because they get the help. They weren't treated like shit growing up.
Yeah.
And they're perfectly fine. So if he would have if his mother would not have treated him like that, would have recognized his behavior instead of calling him a piece of shit, and would have said, hey, let's go get you some help. Let's get you some help. As a young child, it would not have looked down upon like it is as an adult man. As a young child, then yeah, of course they're going to give him the help he needs. If she would have done that, because they had the money to do it, I think it would have been completely different.
So in my opinion, I think the nurture versus nature with Ed Kemper, I say it's a yes and a no. And like Ed Kemper, there is no simple answer. Yes, he was definitely made to do this. He was pushed and everything. However, I do believe that there is just something inherently wrong with Ed, and unless Ed was going to somehow go through life with everybody not pissing him off and not doing anything to him, Ed Kemper was the percentage of him doing something violent or somebody was always going to be significant.
Yeah, but look at what he said. Everything was based around his mother.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. So if being born, something was wrong with him. And again, we will always go back to nature versus nurture. I believe that it is nurture in Ed Kemper's spot. He had something wrong with him, yes. But he killed because of his mother, not because of what was in his head. He killed because of his mother. If you notice, even the killing the animals did not happen until after his mother started treating him like absolute shit. He was, what, 13?
Oh, even younger than that.
He was, and when he killed these animals, he was, 13. Or sorry, 10.
Yeah, it was.
But his mother still at that point was treating him like shit. She hated him from birth. So if he would have not been treated that way, would not have been locked in a basement, almost killed by his sisters, all of that. His sisters are lucky he didn't kill them.
Mm-hmm. Probably. I got the feeling that by the time Ed decided to kill his mother, I think they had already moved out and weren't physically there.
But yeah, so that's just my thoughts. I could go on for
hours.
It's
the same thing with me. It's just, I think with Ed, it's like 80% nurture, 20% nature. I think something was wrong with Ed, but unfortunately he got the wrong upbringing and stimuli at the right developmental ages there. I think when he got out of juvie, he was always going to kill. Being a cop was never... I think being a cop would have just given him a different outlet to kill.
Yeah, maybe.
And again, though, we'll never completely know because he kept running straight to mom.
Yeah. So, like I said, we could go on for hours with Ed Kemper. But we will stop there. We want to thank you for visiting the Scarlet Tavern. Please remember to turn in your glasses, push in your seats, and as always, tip the bard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.